one another very well. It's a very comfortable interview and nothing is really challenged. If the interview's set up, I think obviously one would accept there's only a few people in the world that could get that interview. For me, trying to understand the situation, I listened to an interview where very little was challenged. It was accepted at face value, nothing was pushed back on, and it was evaluated from the perspective of an admiring set of eyes sitting across the desk from him.
What would you say to that, Piers?
Well, I wasn't aware that Simon Jordan... I mean, look, apart from anything else, I was very shocked to discover yesterday that Simon had actually tweeted that he agreed with me about something. So
I agree with you about a lot of things, Piers, but that's also got to do with what I just said.
We're heading into new territory. No, I'm always happy to take interviewing technique advice from Simon.
I wasn't giving you interviewing technique advice. I was just giving you an example of what I felt the interview was. That's what I was asked.
One of the world's... No, if you let me respond, I'm always happy to take interview lectures from people, particularly those who've never interviewed people.
It's not a lecture, Piers, it's an observation.
If I could just finish my sentence, I did challenge him, which is why I got him to admit he shouldn't have done what he did at Tottenham. I got him to make other admissions too. I'm not quite sure what you mean by challenging, because he was setting the record straight over stuff that had been misleading.
Well, I can give you an example if you want. I can give you examples of what I mean by challenging, because I'm not giving you a lecture. I was asked for an opinion upon how you conducted an interview.
Give Piers an example, just one example.
And an example would be if the argument about executives that didn't want him from the year before, didn't want him now, who would these executives be? Because he's, by admission, he's never spoken to the Glazers. Are we talking about Ed Woodward? Are we talking about...
Told you.
Well, no, you didn't. You told me that it's an easy supposition to make. So let me finish, because I hadn't finished. I'll let you finish. The scenario for me, sitting there looking back and looking at the interview that you did and watching it as a former football club owner, thinking, how would this situation manifest itself? Elite player has a problem with the football club, alludes to the fact that this problem starts from people not wanting him a year ago, when the whole world knew that a red carpet was rolled out for him. Who were these executives? Given the fact that Ed Woodward's no longer in the business, so was it him? Was it Richard Arnold, who allegedly has made phone calls to Ronaldo, suggesting that whatever time he needs, he can have? Who were these executives? He'd never met the Glazers. He talked about the Glazers' motivation. How does he know the Glazers' motivation if he's never spoken to them?
Well, I would say to that if there are senior executives running Manchester United who wish to deny on the record anything Ronaldo has said, let them come forward.
But I don't care what you would say, Piers. I wanted to hear what he would say.
Well, he said it was senior executives
name anybody.
of the company.
In the same way, in the same way that you asked for Meghan Markle to name the racists in the royal family, why wouldn't you ask Ronaldo to name explicitly and specifically who he was referring to?
I think if you go back and watch the interview,
I did.
You will see that he names titles of people.
But there's no president, Piers. There's no president in the football club. There isn't a role in the football club for a president.
Should we presume, Piers, he's talking about
the people who run?
Yeah. Should we presume, Piers, he's talking about the chief executive, Richard Arnold?
I would think so, yeah.
Well, he described them separately. He described directors and the president. So a president is one thing, Piers, which isn't a role inside a football club, and I'd assume you would know that. And the other part of it is directors. So if we're going to deal in detail, let's deal in detail. Let's look at the pushback. Let's push back on the idea that someone was going to spend £350 million or euros on signing him on a contract, and where Manchester United might be in the equation, when Man United offered an opportunity to sell him.
By the way, you're talking complete nonsense about the Saudi deal as well, because I know exactly who made that deal, and I know that figure is true. So I heard you earlier saying you don't believe it. Well, you're wrong. So, we can all split hairs about it. So
you've seen the contract from the Saudis, have you?
I've actually spoken to the Saudi person who made the offer myself.
But you've seen the contract, have you?
Unless the person's
lying to me. The answer would be no then, right? So you haven't seen the contract.
Why would they lie?
Piers, I don't know, mate. Why would people misrepresent things? You do that regularly. So you had a wonderful opportunity, and only a few people in the world. And by the way, I agree with a lot of things you say. And the reason why I tweeted something about the interview you did with Emily Matalis is because I agree with a lot of things you say. I don't make puerile comments like you do about the observations about being a failed football club owner, or other points you felt you needed to make on Twitter about me. But the point is that the Ten Hag scenario, where you had an opportunity, because as a former owner, I look at it and say, why in God's name would a manager that's come into a football club that publicly announced from the get-go that Ronaldo was part of his plans, why would he suddenly want to take this player down? And you never asked him once that question. You never asked him his perception of why Ten Hag would go after him that way.
If I could get... Okay, can I just say, I do think you're talking complete nonsense. This interview, over 90 minutes, has made more headlines than any interview.
Yeah, but why am I talking nonsense, Piers? What's nonsense about not understanding the dynamic?
If I could just finish... It has made more headlines around the world than any sporting interview I can ever remember.
Right.
The reason it's made headline, if I could just finish.
Well, go on,
the
then.
reason it's made, if I could finish. The reason it's made so many headlines is because it was revelatory. The reason it was revelatory was because Ronaldo was the one who was correcting the record. Ronaldo was doing what I suspect some of the royal family would love to have done on the record after the Meghan and Harry wine-a-thon, where they accused the royal family of being callous racists, but they weren't allowed to. Ronaldo's not in that position.
But you slaughtered Oprah Winfrey for adopting the same style that you did.
But you're getting the chicken and the egg the wrong way round. Ronaldo is responding to all the stuff that's been in the papers and on broadcast. He is reacting to it. He's not the one precipitating this. He is the one correcting all the smears and lies about him in the last few months, of which there have been many. So my job was to facilitate him setting the record straight as he saw it. Now, if anyone at Manchester United wants to come back on the record from Richard Arnold down and deny specific allegations that Ronaldo's made against the club and the senior executives,
and that's fine, Piers, and that would be great for you. But my observation about you is that you were incredibly critical about the style of interviewing that was deployed by Oprah Winfrey in the advertorial. Hang on, I haven't finished, Piers. In the advertorial that was put forward by them, you did precisely the same thing. You sat with goldfish eyeballs, looking across the table at someone you deeply admire, and you had no constructive objectivity.
I'm not being funny, but you yourself are now sounding very puerile and childish, because there's no comparison between the two things.
Well, there is, Piers, and there is.
There isn't.